The sound of boots on concrete echoed through the underground command center at Naval Station, Pacific Harbor, as Captain Elena Vasquez quietly made her way to the morning briefing. Her voice, soft as a whisper even when she tried to project authority, had earned her nothing but eye rolls and dismissive comments from her fellow officers. What they didn't know was that behind that gentle tone lay the mind of a tactical genius, who would soon prove that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in conference room Delta, as Admiral Rebecca Shaw called the weekly operations meeting to order. Around the polished metal table sat the station's senior staff, their uniforms crisp and their attitudes even crisper. At the far end, almost invisible in her corner chair, sat Captain Elena Vasquez, her personnel file spread before her like a roadmap of missed opportunities. Elena had graduated summa cum laude from the Naval War College with a specialty in air-sea coordination tactics. Her thesis on multi-platform strike integration had been quietly praised by professors, but never gained the attention of the brass, who made career decisions. For 3 years at Pacific Harbor, she had watched as her innovative ideas were either ignored or credited to louder voices in the room. Admiral Shaw's voice cut through the morning briefing with practiced efficiency. Intelligence indicates increased submarine activity in the Coral Triangle. We're implementing Operation Seahawk, a coordinated patrol pattern designed to monitor and respond to potential threats in our territorial waters. Elena studied the tactical display projected on the wall, her mind immediately identifying the gaps in the proposed formation. Patrol routes created blind spots that any competent enemy could exploit, and the communication protocols left dangerous delays between detection and response. She had spent countless hours studying similar scenarios, developing solutions that could prevent the exact problems this operation would likely encounter. Captain Vasquez, Admiral Shaw's voice carried a note of obligatory inclusion. Your air coordination experience puts you in charge of liaison duties with Carrier Strike Group 7. You'll be monitoring communications and providing support as needed. The words stung with their familiar dismissiveness. Liaison duties meant sitting in a chair, watching screens, and relaying messages that others deemed important enough to share. Elena's gentle response was barely audible over the air conditioning. Yes, ma'am. I'll ensure all communications are properly coordinated. Commander Marcus Torres, whose voice could fill an auditorium without electronic assistance, leaned back in his chair with an expression that suggested he found Elena's assignment amusing. Liaison work suits some people better than others, he commented to the officer beside him, his voice pitched just loud enough for Elena to hear. Takes a special kind of person to be satisfied with watching from the sidelines. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun, seated across the table, shifted uncomfortably at the obvious slight. She had worked with Elena on several technical projects and knew firsthand the depth of her tactical knowledge. But challenging Commander Torres in an open briefing would be career suicide, so she remained silent, another small betrayal in Elena's collection of disappointments. Elena kept her expression neutral as she gathered her materials, but internally she was cataloging every flaw in Operation Seahawk's design. The patrol patterns were predictable, the response times were too slow, and the communication structure created single points of failure that could compromise the entire mission. Her gentle voice might not command attention in briefings, but her mind had identified problems that could cost lives. After the meeting dispersed, Elena made her way to the Communication Control Center, a dimly lit space filled with sophisticated monitoring equipment and multiple displays showing real-time naval traffic throughout the Pacific. Petty Officer First Class David Kim looked up from his console as she entered, offering one of the few genuinely respectful greetings she received each day. Captain Vasquez, we've got the Strike Group 7 frequencies locked in. All communications are routing through Station Alpha as requested. Elena appreciated David's professionalism. Unlike many of the senior staff, he had never seemed bothered by her quiet demeanor or questioned her technical competence. "Thank you, Petty Officer Kim. I'd like to review the backup communication protocols and verify our emergency frequency coverage." As Elena settled into her monitoring station, she began the meticulous process of checking every system and protocol that would support Operation Seahawk. Her gentle voice might not carry weight in briefings, but her attention to detail was legendary among the technical staff who actually made operations work. She discovered what she had suspected during the briefing. The communication plan had critical vulnerabilities. The primary frequency assignments created potential interference patterns. The backup systems lacked sufficient redundancy, and the coordination protocols between air and sea assets were outdated by at least 2 years. Elena documented each issue carefully, knowing that her observations would likely be filed away without action unless circumstances forced people to pay attention. Commander Torres appeared in the Communication Control Center on midday, his presence filling the small space with an energy that seemed to demand acknowledgement. "Vasquez, Admiral Shaw wants a status report on the strike group coordination. Everything running smoothly with your liaison duties?" Elena's response was characteristically soft but precise. "All systems are functioning within normal parameters, sir. I've identified several areas where communication efficiency could be improved. If you'd like me to prepare a technical brief." Torres waved dismissively. "I'm sure whatever you found is very thorough, but we don't have time for technical deep dives right now. Just keep the radios working and let us handle the strategic thinking." The casual dismissal was delivered with such practiced ease that Elena wondered if Torres even recognized it as an insult. She nodded quietly and returned to her monitoring duties, but the interaction reinforced her growing certainty that something significant was going to go wrong with Operation Seahawk, and when it did, her gentle voice would be the only one prepared to provide solutions. Throughout the afternoon, Elena monitored the initial deployment of patrol assets, tracking their movements on her displays while simultaneously running calculations in her head about optimal positioning and response scenarios. The ships were following their assigned routes with military precision, but precision wasn't the same as effectiveness. The gaps in coverage were becoming more apparent as the operation progressed. Petty Officer Kim approached her station with a concerned expression. "Captain, I'm picking up some unusual sonar contacts on the edge of our patrol area. Nothing definitive, but the patterns are consistent with submarine activity." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Elena studied the sonar data Kim displayed on her auxiliary screen. The contacts were subtle, barely distinguishable from background noise, but they showed the kind of systematic movement that suggested coordinated reconnaissance. "How long have you been tracking these contacts?" "About 40 minutes, ma'am. They're staying just outside our official patrol boundaries, but they're definitely monitoring our movements." Elena felt a familiar knot forming in her stomach. The submarine activity was following exactly the pattern she had predicted based on the flaws in the patrol design. The enemy was using the blind spots in Operation Seahawk's coverage to conduct surveillance of American naval movements. She reached for her communication headset to report the findings. "Admiral Shaw, this is Captain Vasquez in Communication Control. We're tracking potential submarine contacts that appear to be conducting systematic reconnaissance of our patrol patterns." The response came after a pause that suggested Admiral Shaw was consulting with other staff members. "Captain Vasquez, are these contacts confirmed hostile?" "No, ma'am, but their movement patterns suggest coordinated intelligence gathering. The contacts are exploiting gaps in our current patrol coverage that could be addressed with minor tactical adjustments." Another pause, longer this time. Captain Vasquez, were aware of the submarine activity. Continue monitoring and report any confirmed hostile actions. Do not recommend tactical changes unless specifically requested. Elena set down her headset with the careful control of someone who had learned to manage disappointment professionally. The response was exactly what she had expected, but it still stung. Her technical analysis was being dismissed in favor of maintaining the status quo, even when that status quo had obvious flaws. As evening approached, the submarine contacts became more bold, moving closer to the patrol boundaries and demonstrating increasingly sophisticated coordination. Elena watched the tactical situation develop with growing alarm, her gentle voice providing quiet updates to Petty Officer Kim as they tracked the evolving threat. "They're mapping our entire operational pattern," she observed, her tone carrying a certainty that came from years of studying naval tactics. "This isn't random reconnaissance. They're preparing for something specific." David Kim looked up from his console with obvious concern. "Should we request permission to alert the patrol vessels?" Elena considered the question carefully. Alerting the patrol vessels would require bypassing the chain of command that had already dismissed her concerns. But failing to act could result in American ships being caught completely off guard by whatever operation the submarines were preparing. Her gentle voice carried new resolve as she made her decision. "Continue monitoring all contacts and prepare detailed tracking reports. If the situation escalates, we need to be ready to provide immediate tactical support, regardless of our official limitations." The night shift brought new challenges as radar contacts began appearing at the edge of detection range. Elena had remained at her post long past her scheduled duty hours, driven by an intuition that told her Operation Seahawk was approaching a critical juncture. The submarine contacts had been joined by surface vessels that appeared and disappeared at the limits of sensor coverage. Petty Officer Kim had been replaced by his night shift counterpart, Petty Officer Second Class Maria Santos, who quickly grasped the significance of the tactical situation Elena had been tracking. "Captain, these movement patterns look like preparation for a coordinated strike. Should we escalate this to higher command?" Elena's gentle voice carried the weight of 3 years of dismissed warnings and ignored expertise. "Prepare all the evidence we've collected and format it for immediate transmission. When this situation develops, we're going to need every piece of information we can provide." The words proved prophetic. As dawn approached, Elena's careful monitoring detected the first signs of what would become the largest naval engagement in the Pacific since World War II. The gentle voice that had been mocked and dismissed was about to become the most important sound in the entire theater of operations. But first, she would have to convince people to listen. The submarine contacts had moved into attack positions. Surface vessels were approaching from multiple directions, and the patrol assets of Operation Seahawk were scattered in a formation that made them sitting ducks for a coordinated assault. Elena's technical expertise had predicted this exact scenario, but her gentle voice had been ignored by commanders who valued volume over competence. Now, as the first emergency signals began crackling through the communication center, Elena prepared to prove that sometimes the quietest voices have the most important things to say. The battle that would define her career was about to begin, and she was the only person in the entire Pacific Fleet who truly understood what was happening. The irony wasn't lost on her. For 3 years, her colleagues had dismissed her gentle voice as a sign of weakness or uncertainty. Commander Torres had made countless jokes about quiet Vasquez and her inability to project authority. Admiral Shaw had relegated her to liaison duties precisely because her soft-spoken demeanor didn't fit the traditional image of naval leadership. What none of them understood was that Elena's gentle voice wasn't a limitation, it was a choice. She spoke quietly because she listened carefully, and she listened carefully because she understood that the most important information often came in whispers rather than shouts. Her tactical genius wasn't diminished by her soft delivery. It was enhanced by the careful thought that preceded every word she spoke. As the first distress signals began filling the airwaves, Elena realized that her moment had finally arrived. The gentle voice that had been ignored in briefings and dismissed in discussions was about to coordinate the most complex naval airstrike in modern history. The officers who had mocked her soft-spoken demeanor were about to learn that true authority doesn't come from volume, it comes from competence, preparation, and the courage to act when action is needed most. The battle for the Pacific was beginning, and the outcome would depend entirely on whether anyone would finally listen to the gentle voice that had been trying to warn them all along. Elena adjusted her headset, took a deep breath, and prepared to prove that heroes don't always announce themselves with trumpet fanfares. Sometimes they whisper their way into history, one carefully chosen word at a time. The sonar contacts had moved into their final positions. The surface vessels were approaching attack range, and the scattered patrol assets of Operation Seahawk were about to face an enemy force that outnumbered them 3-1. Everything Elena had predicted was coming true with terrifying precision, and she was the only person in the entire command structure who understood the full scope of the threat. Her gentle voice would either save the day or watch helplessly. As her worst fears became reality, the choice was no longer in her hands, it was in the hands of the commanders, who would finally have to decide whether competence mattered more than conformity, whether results mattered more than rank, and whether a gentle voice could carry the authority to coordinate victory against impossible odds. The moment of truth was approaching, and Elena Vasquez was ready to prove that sometimes the most powerful weapon in any arsenal is a quiet voice backed by absolute certainty and unwavering resolve. The officers who had spent 3 years mocking her gentle demeanor were about to discover that they had been underestimating the wrong person all along. The first explosion shattered the pre-dawn silence at 0347 hours, sending shockwaves through the hull of USS Defiance as Captain Reynolds fought to maintain control of his destroyer. The coordinated attack had begun with surgical precision, targeting the most isolated vessels in Operation Seahawk's patrol formation. Elena's hands flew across her console as emergency signals flooded the communication center, each transmission painting a darker picture of the tactical disaster unfolding across the Pacific. Mayday, Mayday. This is USS Courageous. We are taking torpedo fire from multiple contacts. Hull breach in compartments 4 and 5, requesting immediate assistance. The voice of Captain Morrison crackled through the static professional training, barely containing the panic underneath. Elena's gentle voice cut through the chaos as she coordinated with Petty Officer Santos to track the incoming reports. Maria, plot all reported contact positions on the tactical display. Cross-reference with our submarine tracking data from the past 12 hours. The pattern that emerged on the screen confirmed Elena's worst fears. The enemy had used the blind spots in Operation Seahawk's coverage to position attack submarines in perfect ambush locations. Surface vessels were approaching from 3 directions simultaneously, creating a coordinated assault that exploited every weakness Elena had identified in the original patrol design. Admiral Shaw's voice boomed through the intercom system, carrying the strained authority of a commander watching her operation collapse in real time. All stations, this is Admiral Shaw. We are under coordinated attack by hostile naval forces. All patrol vessels implement defensive formations and prepare for sustained engagement. Elena knew that the standard defensive formations would be inadequate against the sophisticated attack pattern being executed by the enemy forces. The patrol vessels were too scattered to provide mutual support, and their current positions made them vulnerable to the crossfire tactics the enemy was employing. She reached for her communication headset, knowing that her next words could determine whether Operation Seahawk became a victory or a catastrophe. Admiral Shaw, this is Captain Vasquez. I have tactical analysis of the enemy attack pattern, and Recommend immediate coordination adjustments to our defensive posture. The response came through gritted teeth. Captain Vasquez, we are implementing standard defensive protocols. Continue monitoring communications and report any new developments. Elena watched helplessly as USS Courageous took another torpedo. Hit, her damage reports indicating catastrophic flooding and loss of propulsion. The destroyer was dead in the water, her crew fighting desperately to keep her afloat while enemy submarines circled like sharks. The standard defensive protocols were failing exactly as Elena had predicted they would. Commander Torres burst into the communication control center, his usual swagger replaced by barely controlled urgency. Vasquez, we need you to establish contact with Carrier Strike Group 7. We're requesting immediate air support for the patrol vessels. Elena's fingers moved across her console with practiced precision, but her gentle voice carried an edge of frustration. Sir, I've been monitoring Strike Group 7's position. Their current location puts them 47 minutes away from effective strike range. By the time air support arrives, most of our patrol vessels will be destroyed or severely damaged. Torres stared at the tactical display, his expression showing the first cracks in his confidence. What are you suggesting? The enemy attack pattern indicates they're using a layered defense strategy. Their surface vessels are positioned to intercept any air support from Strike Group 7, while their submarines maintain pressure on our patrol assets. We need to coordinate a multi-vector response that targets their command and control structure. Torres's voice carried the dismissive tone Elena had heard countless times before. Captain Vasquez, your job is communications liaison, not tactical planning. Contact Strike Group 7 and request maximum air support. That's an order. Elena complied with the order while simultaneously analyzing the developing battle through her auxiliary displays. The enemy forces were executing a textbook example of coordinated naval warfare, using their submarine screen to fix American vessels in place while their surface elements maneuvered for decisive strikes. The attack had been planned with intimate knowledge of Operation Seahawk's weaknesses, suggesting either exceptional intelligence gathering or inside information about American tactical doctrine. USS Defiance transmitted another distress signal as enemy surface vessels closed to engagement range. Control, this is Defiance. We count 6 hostile surface combatants approaching from bearing 270. Requesting weapons release authority for defensive engagement. Admiral Shaw's response carried the weight of command decision under extreme pressure. Defiance, you are authorized to engage hostile surface vessels. All patrol units, implement combat spread formation and prepare for surface action. Elena winced as she watched the tactical display update with the new formation. The combat spread would provide better fields of fire for the American vessels, but it would also eliminate their ability to provide mutual defensive support against submarine attacks. The enemy had anticipated this exact response and positioned their underwater assets to exploit the formation change. The battle intensified as USS Hampton opened fire on the approaching enemy destroyers, her 5-inch guns lighting up the dawn sky with muzzle flashes. The enemy returned fire immediately, their more modern weapon systems demonstrating superior range and accuracy. Elena tracked the engagement through her sensors, noting the systematic way the enemy was degrading American combat capability. Admiral Shaw, Elena's gentle voice carried new urgency as she analyzed the battle damage reports flowing through her console. The enemy is targeting our communication and sensor capabilities specifically. They're trying to blind us before delivering a knockout blow. Captain Vasquez, focus on maintaining communications with our vessels. Let the tactical staff handle battle analysis. Elena felt the familiar frustration of being dismissed, but this time the stakes were too high for polite compliance. She opened a direct channel to Petty Officer Santos and began implementing her own tactical analysis protocol. Maria, I need You to monitor all enemy communication intercepts and cross-reference them with our submarine tracking data. Look for patterns that indicate command vessel locations. Santos nodded grimly, understanding that they were operating outside official authority, but recognizing the desperate nature of their situation. The standard tactical responses were failing catastrophically, and Elena's technical expertise might be their only hope of turning the battle around. USS Courageous transmitted her final message at 0421 hours, her communication cut short by a massive explosion that lit up the horizon. Elena watched the destroyer's symbol disappear from her tactical display, knowing that 312 sailors had just paid the price for the flawed planning that had created Operation Seahawk. Her gentle voice trembled slightly as she acknowledged the loss. "Control copies your last transmission, Courageous. Godspeed." The loss of Courageous galvanized the remaining patrol vessels into more aggressive action, but their scattered formation prevented effective coordination. USS Defiance and USS Hampton were fighting separate battles against superior enemy forces, their isolation making them vulnerable to the focused attacks the enemy was delivering. Elena studied the pattern of enemy movements, her mind working through the tactical mathematics that governed naval warfare. The opposing force was operating with a level of coordination that suggested centralized command and control, but their communication patterns indicated vulnerabilities that could be exploited if someone had the authority to coordinate a proper response. "Admiral Shaw," Elena tried once more, her gentle voice carrying desperate conviction. "I've identified the enemy command vessel. It's operating from a position that makes it vulnerable to coordinated air and surface attack, but we need to execute the strike within the next 15 minutes before they complete their tactical repositioning. Captain Vasquez, I've told you repeatedly that tactical planning is not your responsibility. Continue monitoring communications and report any new enemy contacts." Elena stared at her tactical display, watching as the perfect opportunity to turn the battle around slowly disappeared. The enemy command vessel was maintaining position to coordinate the final phase of their attack, but in doing so, they had exposed themselves to the kind of precise strike that could shatter their entire operational structure. Unfortunately, that strike required the kind of complex coordination that only someone with Elena's technical expertise could execute. Commander Torres reappeared in the communication control center, his face pale with the strain of watching Operation Seahawk disintegrate. "Vasquez, Strike Group 7 is requesting detailed tactical information about enemy positions. Can you provide accurate targeting data?" Elena's response was immediate. "Yes, sir. I've been tracking all enemy contacts since the battle began. I can provide precise coordinates, movement vectors, and threat assessments for every hostile vessel in the operational area. Send everything you have to Strike Group 7 immediately. They're launching a full squadron of FA-18 Super Hornets for close air support." Elena began transmitting her tactical data to the carrier group, but her gentle voice carried a warning. "Sir, the enemy has positioned surface-to-air missile platforms to intercept airstrikes from Strike Group 7's current approach vector. The aircraft will be flying into a trap unless they coordinate with our surface vessels to suppress the air defense network." Torres paused in his urgent movement around the control center. "What kind of coordination?" "The enemy command vessel is controlling their air defense network through data link systems. If we can disable or destroy that vessel, their coordinated air defense will collapse. But it requires precise timing between air and surface strikes." Torres stared at Elena with an expression she had never seen before, the look of a commander realizing that the quiet voice he had dismissed might be the key to survival. "Can you coordinate that kind of strike?" Elena's gentle voice carried absolute certainty. "Yes, sir. But I'll need direct communication authority with both Strike Group 7 and our surface vessels. The coordination windows are measured in seconds, not minutes. The request violated every protocol of naval command structure. Elena was a communications liaison, not a tactical coordinator. Her authority extended to monitoring and reporting, not to directing combat operations. But Commander Torres was watching his career and his sailors disappear into the Pacific, and conventional authority wasn't winning the battle. "Do it," Torres said finally. "I'll take responsibility for the authorization." Elena felt a surge of adrenaline as she opened communication channels that had been closed to her for 3 years of service. Her gentle voice would finally have the authority to coordinate the complex tactical operations she had studied and perfected in countless theoretical scenarios. The officers who had mocked her soft-spoken demeanor were about to discover what that gentle voice could accomplish when, backed by technical mastery and absolute determination, Strike Group 7, this is Pacific Harbor Control. I am assuming tactical coordination for combined air-surface strike operations. Stand by for detailed mission briefing. The response came from Commander Patricia Walsh, the Air Group Commander aboard USS Enterprise. Pacific Harbor Control, this is Strike Leader. We copy your assumption of tactical coordination. Ready to receive mission parameters. Elena's gentle voice began weaving together the most complex naval operation of her career, coordinating airstrikes, surface vessel movements, and defensive positioning with the precision of a master conductor directing a symphony. The battle for the Pacific was about to turn on the quality of her technical expertise and her ability to make split-second decisions under impossible pressure. Strike Leader, enemy command vessel is located at grid coordinates 157, 4 degrees. East 21, 2 degrees north. Target is a modified Luoyang-class destroyer with enhanced command and control capabilities. Time on target must be coordinated with surface vessel strike to achieve maximum effectiveness. Commander Walsh's voice crackled back through the communication link. Pacific Harbor Control, we copy target coordinates. What kind of surface coordination are you planning? Elena studied her tactical display, calculating angles, timing, and defensive responses with the mathematical precision that had earned her recognition at the Naval War College. Strike Leader, USS Defiance will engage enemy air defense platforms from bearing 090, drawing their attention and forcing them to reveal their positions. Your strike package will approach from bearing 270 during the engagement, targeting the command vessel with precision-guided munitions. The plan was audacious in its complexity and dangerous in its execution. Elena was asking Defiance to expose herself to concentrated enemy fire in order to create an opening for the airstrike. If the timing was off by even 30 seconds, either the destroyer would be destroyed or the aircraft would fly into intact air defenses. Commander Torres listened to Elena's coordination with growing amazement. The gentle voice that had whispered suggestions in briefings was now directing combat operations with authority and precision that impressed even veteran naval officers. Her technical knowledge was translating into tactical brilliance under the extreme pressure of actual combat. Defiance, this is Pacific Harbor Control. I need you to execute a high-speed approach on enemy air defense positions at grid coordinates 157, 1 degrees east, 21, 4 degrees north. Your engagement will commence in exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Captain Reynolds's voice came back immediately. Pacific Harbor Control, understood. Defiance is coming about and increasing speed. We'll be in position for coordinated strike. Elena monitored the tactical situation as all the pieces of her complex plan moved into position. Strike Group 7's aircraft were approaching from the southwest, their sophisticated avionics systems locked onto the target coordinates she had provided. USS Defiance was accelerating toward her dangerous assignment, her crew preparing for the kind of close-range engagement that would test their skill and courage. The enemy forces seemed unaware of the coordinated strike developing around them. Their command vessel continued transmitting tactical instructions to their scattered units, maintaining the centralized control that made them vulnerable to the kind of precise attack Elena had designed. The submarines were repositioning for what appeared to be a final assault on the remaining American patrol vessels. All units, this is Pacific Harbor Control. Coordinated strike commences in 60 seconds. Defiance will engage air defense platforms. At time 0, strike leader will commence attack run 30 seconds later. All other vessels maintain current positions and prepare for follow-up operations. Elena's gentle voice carried across the Pacific, coordinating a battle that would be studied in naval academies for decades to come. The soft-spoken communications officer, who had been relegated to liaison duties, was orchestrating a tactical masterpiece that would either save Operation Seahawk or witness its final destruction. The countdown reached 0, and Elena's carefully orchestrated plan exploded into action across 50 square miles of Pacific Ocean. USS Defiance opened fire on the enemy air defense positions, her guns blazing as she closed to point-blank range with hostile vessels that outgunned her significantly. The enemy response was immediate and overwhelming, but their attention was focused entirely on the charging destroyer. Strike leader, enemy air defenses are engaged. You have a clear approach corridor. Time on target in 15 seconds. Commander. Walsh's FA-18 Super Hornets screamed out of the dawn sky, their precision-guided weapons locked onto the enemy command vessel that had orchestrated the entire attack. Elena watched through her sensors as the strike package delivered their ordnance with surgical accuracy, the explosions lighting up her tactical display as the enemy coordination center disappeared in a ball of fire and debris. The effect was immediate and devastating. Enemy vessels that had been operating with coordinated precision suddenly found themselves isolated and confused. Their submarine screen began making individual decisions that contradicted each other, while their surface vessels lost the tactical awareness that had made them so effective. Elena's gentle voice continued coordinating the battle as American forces pressed their sudden advantage. All units, enemy command and control has been eliminated. Press the attack while they're disorganized. Hampton, you have clear fields of fire on enemy surface vessels bearing 045. The tide of battle turned with stunning speed. Enemy forces that had been methodically destroying American patrol vessels suddenly found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned. The loss of their command vessel had shattered their coordination, turning a disciplined attack into a confused retreat. Elena monitored the developing situation with satisfaction, but her gentle voice remained focused on the immediate tactical requirements. The battle wasn't over yet, and the enemy still had significant combat capability despite the loss of their command structure. Her coordination had created an opportunity, but exploiting that opportunity would require continued precision and timing. Strike leader, enemy submarines are attempting to disengage to the northwest. Can you provide harassment strikes to prevent their escape? Commander Walsh's response was immediate. Pacific Harbor Control, we have sufficient ordnance for submarine harassment. Beginning attack runs now. Elena watched the airstrike suppress the enemy submarine withdrawal, forcing them to remain submerged and limiting their tactical options. The coordinated assault that had threatened to destroy Operation Seahawk was collapsing under the pressure of her precisely orchestrated counterattack. Admiral Shaw's voice crackled through the command circuit, carrying a tone Elena had never heard before, respect mixed with amazement. Captain Vasquez, outstanding tactical coordination. You've turned this battle around completely. Elena's gentle response carried the satisfaction of 3 years of vindication. Thank you, Admiral. The enemy made the mistake of centralizing their command structure. Once we eliminated their coordination capability, their tactical advantage disappeared. The battle continued for another hour as American forces systematically destroyed or captured the remaining enemy vessels. Elena's tactical coordination had transformed a devastating defeat into a decisive victory. Her gentle voice guiding complex operations that saved hundreds of lives and preserved American naval dominance in the Pacific. As the final enemy vessel surrendered, Elena reflected on the irony of her situation. The soft-spoken communications officer, who had been mocked for her gentle demeanor, had just coordinated the most successful naval engagement in recent memory. Her quiet voice had carried more authority than all the shouting and posturing she had endured during her career. Commander Torres approached her station with an expression of genuine respect. "Captain Vasquez, that was the most impressive display of tactical coordination I've ever witnessed. Your planning and execution were flawless." Elena's gentle voice carried quiet satisfaction. "Thank you, sir. I'm glad my technical training proved useful in a practical application." The understatement was typical of Elena's understated style. But Torres understood the magnitude of what had just occurred. The gentle voice that had been dismissed and ignored had just saved Operation Seahawk and possibly prevented a major naval disaster. Her soft-spoken demeanor had concealed tactical genius that rivaled the greatest naval commanders in history. The Communication Control Center began receiving congratulatory messages from vessels throughout the Pacific Fleet as news of the victory spread. Elena's tactical coordination had not only won the battle, but had demonstrated new possibilities for combined air-sea operations that would influence naval doctrine for years to come. Her gentle voice had finally been heard, and the sound would echo through naval history as an example of what happens when competence is given the authority to act. The officers who had spent years mocking her soft-spoken style were about to learn that true leadership doesn't announce itself with volume, it proves itself with results. The aftermath of the Pacific engagement brought an eerie silence to the communication control center as Elena methodically documented the tactical decisions that had transformed catastrophic defeat into decisive victory. Her gentle voice maintained its characteristic calm as she filed reports that would reshape naval doctrine and challenge decades of conventional wisdom about command authority and tactical coordination. Admiral Shaw entered the control center 6 hours after the last enemy vessel had been neutralized, her uniform still bearing the creases of a commander who had spent the night coordinating damage control and casualty reports. The expression on her face carried a complexity that Elena had never seen before, a mixture of gratitude, amazement, and what appeared to be genuine regret. "Captain Vasquez," Admiral Shaw began, her voice carrying none of its usual commanding authority. "I owe you an apology that goes far deeper than professional courtesy. Your tactical coordination saved Operation Seahawk and prevented what could have been the worst naval disaster in Pacific Fleet history." Elena's response embodied the understated professionalism that had characterized her entire career. "Thank you, Admiral. I was simply applying the technical training and tactical analysis that my position required." The simplicity of her answer seemed to impact Admiral Shaw more profoundly than any dramatic declaration might have. Here was an officer who had been systematically marginalized and dismissed, yet she responded to vindication with the same quiet competence she had shown during years of being overlooked. "Captain Vasquez, the tactical coordination you executed during the engagement demonstrated capabilities that extend far beyond your current assignment. The Pacific Fleet Command has been reviewing your service record and your performance during the battle, and we believe significant changes are warranted in how we utilize your expertise." Elena listened carefully, her gentle voice carrying only professional interest. "I'm prepared to serve wherever the Navy believes my skills can be most effectively utilized." Admiral Shaw placed a folder on Elena's console, its classification markings indicating contents far above her current clearance level. "Captain Vasquez, you're being recommended for promotion to commander and assignment as Director of Tactical Coordination for the Pacific Theater. The position will require you to develop new protocols for multi-platform naval operations and to train other officers in the coordination techniques you demonstrated during the engagement. The magnitude of the assignment was staggering. Elena would be moving from communications liaison to one of the most influential tactical positions in the Pacific Fleet, with authority to reshape how naval operations were planned and executed across the entire theater. Her gentle voice carried quiet amazement as she absorbed the implications. "Admiral, I'm honored by the confidence you're placing in me. The tactical coordination techniques I used during the engagement were developed through years of theoretical study, but implementing them on a theater-wide scale will require significant institutional support." Admiral Shaw's expression suggested she had already considered the challenges involved. "Commander Vasquez, the engagement you coordinated has been studied by every tactical analysis team in the Pacific Fleet. Your methods demonstrated effectiveness that exceeded our best-case projections for coordinated operations. The institution is ready to support whatever changes you recommend." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Torres, whose demeanor had undergone a transformation that paralleled Admiral Shaw's. The officer who had spent 3 years dismissing Elena's contributions now approached her with obvious deference and what appeared to be genuine embarrassment about his previous attitude. "Captain Vasquez," Torres began, his voice lacking its usual commanding presence, "I want to personally apologize for the way I've treated your expertise over the past 3 years. Your tactical coordination during the engagement was nothing short of brilliant, and I realize now that my dismissive attitude prevented the Navy from utilizing your capabilities effectively." Elena's gentle response demonstrated the grace that had sustained her through years of professional marginalization. "Commander Torres, we all serve according to our understanding of our roles and responsibilities. The important thing is that the mission was successful and our sailors are safe." Torres shook his head with obvious regret. "Captain Vasquez, it's more than that. I let my preconceptions about leadership style and command presence blind me to genuine tactical genius. Your gentle voice carried more authority during that engagement than all the shouting and posturing I've done in my entire career." The admission carried weight that extended far beyond personal apology. Torres was acknowledging that the institutional culture of the Navy had systematically undervalued Elena's contributions based on superficial characteristics rather than demonstrated competence. His recognition represented a broader awakening within the command structure about the limitations of traditional leadership models. Elena's promotion ceremony took place 3 weeks later in the same briefing room where suggestions had been dismissed for 3 years. The irony was not lost on anyone present as Admiral Shaw administered the oath that would transform Elena from marginalized communications officer to one of the most influential tactical coordinators in the Pacific Fleet. "Commander Elena Vasquez," Admiral Shaw pronounced formally, "by the authority vested in me by the United States Navy, I hereby promote you to the rank of Commander and assign you as Director of Tactical Coordination for the Pacific Theater, effective immediately." Elena's gentle voice carried new authority as she accepted the promotion, but her tone remained characteristically understated. "I accept this promotion and assignment with gratitude for the confidence placed in me and dedication to serving the mission and personnel of the Pacific Fleet." The ceremony was attended by officers from throughout the theater, many of whom had heard recordings of Elena's tactical coordination during the engagement and wanted to meet the gentle voice that had guided one of the most successful naval operations in recent history. Captain Reynolds from USS Defiance made a point of personally thanking Elena for the coordination that had saved his ship and crew. "Commander Vasquez," Reynolds said after the formal ceremony concluded, "your tactical guidance during the engagement was the difference between victory and catastrophe. The precision of your coordination gave us exactly the opportunities we needed to survive and succeed." Elena's response reflected the collaborative approach that would characterize her new role. Captain Reynolds, your willingness to execute. Dangerous maneuvers created the tactical opportunities that made success possible. Effective coordination requires commanders who are willing to trust and execute complex plans under extreme pressure. The exchange exemplified Elena's understanding that tactical coordination was ultimately about enabling other people to perform at their best, rather than demonstrating personal brilliance. Her gentle voice had guided the engagement, but the success had depended on the skill and courage of sailors throughout the fleet, who had executed her plans with precision and dedication. Elena's first assignment as Director of Tactical Coordination involved developing new training protocols for multi-platform operations, based on the techniques she had improvised during the engagement. The project required her to translate intuitive, tactical decisions into systematic procedures that could be taught to officers throughout the fleet. Working with a team of tactical analysts and combat veterans, Elena began documenting the decision-making processes that had enabled her to coordinate airstrikes, surface vessel movements, and defensive positioning with such devastating effectiveness. The project revealed that her success had resulted from a combination of technical expertise, spatial reasoning abilities, and communication skills that traditional naval training had never systematically developed. The key insight, Elena explained to her development team during one of their planning sessions, is that tactical coordination requires understanding the capabilities and limitations of every platform involved in an operation. Most coordination failures result from asking units to perform missions that exceed their tactical parameters or that conflict with the requirements of other platforms. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, who had been assigned to Elena's development team, nodded with obvious understanding. Commander Vasquez, your coordination during the engagement demonstrated exactly that kind of comprehensive platform awareness. You never asked Defiance to do anything beyond her capabilities, and you timed the airstrikes to complement rather than conflict with surface vessel operations. Elena's gentle voice carried the pedagogical clarity that would make her an exceptional instructor. Effective coordination also requires understanding that every tactical decision creates opportunities and vulnerabilities. The enemy command vessel we targeted was vulnerable precisely because it was positioned to coordinate their operations. Our coordination had to exploit that vulnerability while managing the risks our own operations created. The training protocols Elena developed emphasized systematic analysis of tactical situations, comprehensive understanding of platform capabilities, and communication techniques that could maintain coordination under the stress of combat operations. Her gentle voice became the model for how tactical coordinators should communicate clear, precise, and calm enough to be understood even in chaotic combat environments. Elena's first major test as Director of Tactical Coordination came 6 months after her promotion, when intelligence reports indicated a potential threat to American naval operations in the South China Sea. The scenario bore similarities to the Pacific engagement, but on a much larger scale and with additional complexity from international political considerations. Admiral Shaw convened a planning conference that included senior officers from throughout the Pacific Fleet, along with Elena's newly established Tactical Coordination Division. The meeting took place in the same briefing room where Elena's suggestions had been dismissed just months earlier, but now her gentle voice carried the authority of proven success. The intelligence indicates coordinated naval exercises by potential adversaries that could threaten freedom of navigation in international waters, Admiral Shaw began. Commander Vasquez, your Tactical Coordination Division has been tasked with developing response options that demonstrate American capabilities while maintaining appropriate escalation control. Elena studied the intelligence reports and satellite imagery with the same methodical precision she had applied to analyzing Operation Seahawk's weaknesses. The potential threat was more sophisticated than anything the Pacific Fleet had previously encountered, requiring coordination between naval air, and potentially space-based assets across a geographic area that spanned thousands of square miles. Admiral Shaw. Elena's gentle voice carried the confidence that came from successful experience. The scenario requires a demonstration of coordination capabilities that exceed anything we've previously attempted. I recommend implementing scaled version of the multi-platform protocols we've been developing, with modifications to account for the extended operational area and international visibility. The recommendation represented a significant evolution from Elena's previous role as communications liaison. She was now proposing tactical operations that would be observed by naval forces around the world and would influence international perceptions of American naval capabilities for years to come. Commander Torres, who had become one of Elena's strongest supporters since the Pacific engagement, raised a practical concern. Commander Vasquez, the scale you're proposing requires coordination between units that have never operated together and commanders who haven't trained with your protocols. How do we ensure effective execution? Elena's response demonstrated the systematic thinking that had enabled her to coordinate complex operations under pressure. Commander Torres will implement a phased training program that begins with bilateral coordination between individual platforms and builds toward comprehensive multi-platform operations. Each phase will be designed to validate specific coordination capabilities before advancing to more complex scenarios. The training program Elena designed became a model for tactical coordination development throughout the Navy. Her gentle voice guided officers through scenarios that tested their ability to coordinate operations under various stress conditions, always emphasizing the principles of comprehensive platform awareness and systematic decision-making that had proven successful during the Pacific engagement. Lieutenant Jessica Morrison, a young communications officer who reminded Elena of her earlier self, approached her after one of the training sessions with obvious admiration and curiosity. Commander Vasquez, how did you develop the confidence to coordinate such complex operations? The tactical decisions you made during the Pacific engagement required incredible certainty under extreme pressure. Elena's gentle response reflected the self-awareness that had sustained her through years of professional marginalization. Lieutenant Morrison, the confidence came from understanding that effective coordination requires focus on the mission and the people depending on you rather than on personal recognition or career advancement. When your primary concern is enabling other people to succeed, the tactical decisions become clearer. The insight revealed a fundamental aspect of Elena's leadership philosophy that had been obscured by years of being dismissed and overlooked. Her gentle voice had never been a sign of uncertainty or weakness. It had been a reflection of her focus on mission accomplishment rather than personal advancement. Her understated demeanor had concealed absolute confidence in her technical capabilities and unwavering commitment to supporting the sailors under her coordination. The South China Sea operation took place 3 months later, involving coordination between 17 surface vessels, 4 submarine platforms, and 2 carrier air wings across an operational area that tested every aspect of Elena's coordination protocols. The complexity exceeded the Pacific engagement by an order of magnitude, requiring Elena to coordinate operations while managing international political considerations and media attention from around the world. Elena established her coordination center aboard USS Enterprise, the flagship for the operation, where her gentle voice would guide the most complex naval demonstration in modern history. The irony was profound. The officer who had been relegated to liaison duties was now coordinating operations that would be studied by naval academies around the world and would influence maritime strategy for decades to come. All stations. This is Operation Control. Elena's gentle voice carried across thousands of square miles of ocean as she initiated the coordination sequence. Commence demonstration operations according to planned timeline. All platforms maintain assigned coordination protocols and report status every 15 minutes. The operation unfolded with precision that amazed international observers and validated every aspect of Elena's coordination philosophy. Surface vessels, submarines, and aircraft operated as an integrated system rather than independent units, demonstrating capabilities that exceeded the sum of their individual contributions. Elena's coordination enabled the fleet to accomplish mission objectives while maintaining formation, integrity, and communication effectiveness that impressed even veteran naval officers. Admiral Shaw observed the operation from the Enterprise's bridge, watching Elena coordinate complex maneuvers with the same understated competence she had shown during her years as communications liaison. The gentle voice that had been dismissed in briefings was now directing operations that demonstrated American naval supremacy to potential adversaries around the world. Commander Vasquez, Admiral Shaw commented during a brief lull in the operations, "Your coordination has exceeded every projection we made for this demonstration. The effectiveness you're achieving with multi-platform operations represents a fundamental advancement in naval capabilities." Elena's response maintained the collaborative focus that had characterized her entire approach to tactical coordination. Admiral Shaw, the effectiveness results from the skill and dedication of the sailors executing these operations. Coordination can only succeed when every platform is operated by professionals who understand their role in the larger mission. The South China Sea operation concluded without incident, but its impact on naval doctrine and international maritime relations was immediate and lasting. Elena's coordination had demonstrated that American naval forces could operate as an integrated system with capabilities that far exceeded traditional platform-based operations. Her gentle voice had guided a demonstration that would influence naval strategy around the world. Elena's success led to her assignment as the Navy's first Director of Advanced Tactical Coordination, a position created specifically to institutionalize the coordination methods she had developed and proven in operational environments. The assignment carried flag officer responsibilities and put her in charge of training coordination specialists for fleets around the world. The magnitude of Elena's transformation was evident during her change of command ceremony, where she was promoted to captain and given authority over tactical coordination development for the entire United States Navy. The gentle voice that had whispered suggestions in briefings was now setting policy that would guide naval operations for generations to come. Captain Elena Vasquez, the Chief of Naval Operations, announced during the ceremony, "Your contributions to tactical coordination have revolutionized how the United States Navy conducts complex operations. Your methods have proven effective in every scenario where they've been applied, and your training programs have developed coordination capabilities throughout the fleet that exceed our most optimistic projections." Elena's acceptance speech embodied the understated professionalism that had sustained her through years of being underestimated and marginalized. "I accept this promotion and responsibility with gratitude for the confidence placed in me and commitment to developing coordination capabilities that will serve the Navy and our nation for decades to come." Effective coordination has always been about enabling other people to perform at their best, and I look forward to continuing that mission on a broader scale. The ceremony was attended by officers from around the world who had come to study Elena's coordination methods and to understand how her gentle voice had achieved results that traditional command approaches had never accomplished. Her techniques were being adopted by allied navies and studied by military academies as examples of how technical expertise and systematic thinking could revolutionize tactical operations. Elena's legacy extended far beyond her personal success. The officers she trained became leaders throughout the Navy, carrying her coordination philosophy and communication techniques to commands around the world. Her gentle voice had created a new model of naval leadership that emphasized competence over charisma and results over recognition. Lieutenant Commander Chun, who had become Elena's chief deputy, reflected on the transformation during one of their planning sessions. Captain Vasquez, it's remarkable how your approach to coordination has influenced leadership development throughout the Navy. Officers are learning that effective command doesn't require loud voices or dramatic gestures. It requires technical competence and absolute focus on mission accomplishment. Elena's gentle response carried the satisfaction of someone who had seen her deepest professional beliefs validated through practical application. Sarah, the most important lesson is that leadership authority comes from enabling other people to succeed rather than from demanding recognition for your own contributions. When coordination focuses on mission accomplishment rather than personal advancement, everyone performs better. The insight encapsulated Elena's entire approach to naval service and explained why her gentle voice had achieved results that louder, more traditional leaders had never accomplished. Her understated demeanor had concealed absolute confidence in her capabilities and unwavering commitment to supporting the sailors, whose lives depended on her tactical decisions. Elena's final assignment before retirement involved establishing the Naval Tactical Coordination Institute, a permanent training facility dedicated to developing the next generation of coordination specialists. The institute would ensure that her methods and philosophy would continue influencing naval operations long after her own service had concluded. The dedication ceremony for the institute took place at Naval Station Pacific Harbor, where Elena's career had begun with dismissed suggestions and overlooked expertise. The same briefing room where her gentle voice had been ignored now housed a memorial to the engagement where her coordination had saved Operation Seahawk and transformed naval tactical doctrine. The Naval Tactical Coordination Institute, Elena explained to the assembled officers during the dedication ceremony, will serve as a permanent reminder that effective leadership comes in many forms, and that the most important voices are often the quietest ones. Our mission is to ensure that technical competence and systematic thinking are valued as highly as traditional command presence, and that no officer's contributions are dismissed based on communication style rather than demonstrated results. The Institute's motto, inscribed above the entrance in Elena's own handwriting, reads simply, "Coordination through competence." The words embodied her entire philosophy of naval service and her belief that effective leadership was ultimately about enabling other people to accomplish missions that none of them could complete individually. Elena's retirement ceremony took place 5 years later, attended by officers from around the world who had been influenced by her coordination methods and leadership philosophy. The gentle voice that had been mocked and dismissed had become one of the most respected sounds in naval service, associated with tactical brilliance and unwavering commitment to mission accomplishment. Admiral Shaw, now Chief of Naval Operations, delivered the primary remarks at Elena's retirement ceremony. Captain Elena Vasquez represents the finest traditions of naval service technical excellence, tactical innovation, and absolute dedication to the sailors she served. Her gentle voice guided operations that saved countless lives and advanced naval capabilities in ways that will influence maritime strategy for generations to come. Elena's farewell address to the Navy embodied the understated grace that had characterized her entire career. "I have been privileged to serve with the finest sailors in the world and to contribute to missions that defend our nation and preserve maritime freedom. The greatest lesson I've learned is that effective leadership is ultimately about service to others rather than personal recognition, and that the most important authority any officer can possess is the trust earned through competence and dedication." The ceremony concluded with Elena being awarded the Navy Distinguished Service Medal, the highest peacetime decoration the service could bestow. The citation specifically mentioned her tactical coordination during the Pacific engagement and her subsequent contributions to naval doctrine and training. Her gentle voice had earned recognition that exceeded anything achieved by officers with more traditional command styles. Elena's retirement led to her appointment as a distinguished professor of naval strategy at the Naval War College, where her gentle voice would continue influencing the next generation of naval officers. Her courses on tactical coordination became the most sought-after classes at the college, attracting students from around the world who wanted to understand how quiet competence could achieve results that dramatic leadership had never accomplished. Years later, Elena would reflect on her career with the satisfaction of someone who had remained true to her principles, despite institutional pressure to conform to traditional leadership models. Her gentle voice had proved that authority comes from competence rather than volume, that effective coordination requires understanding rather than commanding, and that the most important leadership decisions are often made by the quietest people in the room. The officers she had trained carried her methods and philosophy throughout the Navy and beyond, creating a generation of leaders who understood that tactical excellence and systematic thinking were more valuable than dramatic gestures and loud commands. Elena's legacy lived on in every operation, coordinated with her techniques, and every sailor trained according to her principles. The Communication Control Center at Naval Station Pacific Harbor was eventually renamed in Elena's honor, a permanent reminder that the most important voices in naval service are often the gentlest ones. Her story became required study at naval academies around the world, teaching future officers that effective leadership comes in many forms and that competence will ultimately overcome prejudice and institutional bias. Elena Vasquez had proved that heroes don't always announce themselves with trumpet fanfares or dramatic declarations. Sometimes they whisper their way into history, one carefully chosen word at a time, earning authority through results rather than demanding recognition through volume. Her gentle voice had coordinated victory against impossible odds and had transformed naval doctrine in ways that would influence maritime strategy for generations to come. The quiet professional who had been dismissed and marginalized had become one of the most influential naval officers of her generation, proving that true leadership doesn't require loud voices or commanding presence. It requires technical competence, systematic thinking, and absolute dedication to the mission and the people who depend on your decisions. Elena's gentle voice had spoken with more authority than all the shouting and posturing she had endured during her career, and that voice would continue echoing through naval history as an example of what happens when competence is finally given the opportunity to lead. The distinguished professor's lecture hall at the Naval War College fell silent as Elena Vasquez entered, her gentle footsteps barely audible on the polished floor. 23 years had passed since that fog-shrouded morning when her soft voice had first guided aircraft through impossible conditions, and now that same voice would shape the minds of future naval commanders from around the world. Commander Alexandra Stirling, a rising star in the British Royal Navy, watched Elena approach the podium with the reverence reserved for living legends. Stirling had studied every recorded detail of the Pacific engagement, analyzing Elena's tactical decisions with the intensity of a scholar examining ancient texts. The opportunity to learn directly from the architect of modern naval coordination doctrine was a career-defining moment. Elena's gentle voice carried the same understated authority that had once coordinated life-and-death decisions across thousands of square miles of ocean. Today we'll examine the fundamental principles of multi-platform tactical coordination, using real-world scenarios to understand how theoretical knowledge translates into practical results under combat conditions. The students leaned forward, knowing they were about to hear insights that couldn't be found in any textbook. Elena's teaching method emphasized understanding the human elements that determine tactical success or failure, recognizing that coordination was ultimately about enabling people to perform beyond their individual capabilities. Effective coordination begins with a simple principle, Elena continued, her gentle tone commanding absolute attention. Every tactical decision must consider not only what you're asking people to do, but why they should trust your judgment enough to risk their lives executing your plans. Lieutenant Commander James Morrison, son of the Jessica Morrison who had once sought Elena's guidance, raised his hand with obvious respect. Professor Vasquez, during the Pacific engagement, you coordinated units that had never worked together before. How did you establish that trust in real time? Elena's response reflected decades of experience analyzing the psychological aspects of combat leadership. Trust in tactical coordination comes from demonstrating comprehensive understanding of everyone's capabilities and limitations. When you show that your plans account for their safety and enable their success, people will execute complex maneuvers that they would never attempt for commanders who seem to be improvising or experimenting. The insight revealed a fundamental aspect of Elena's leadership philosophy that extended far beyond tactical coordination. Her gentle voice had earned trust because it had always been backed by meticulous preparation and genuine concern for the people depending on her decisions. Even under extreme pressure, she had never asked anyone to take risks that she hadn't carefully calculated and personally accepted responsibility for. Captain David Chun, Sarah's younger brother who had followed his sister into naval service, posed a question that touched on contemporary challenges facing naval coordinators. Professor Vasquez, modern naval operations involve coordination with unmanned systems and artificial intelligence platforms. How do the principles you developed apply to human-machine coordination? Elena's gentle voice carried the intellectual curiosity that had driven her throughout her career. David, that's an excellent question that highlights the evolution of David. That's an excellent question that highlights the evolution of us and of coordination challenges. The fundamental principles remain the same: understanding capabilities and limitations. But the application becomes more complex when some of your platforms don't have human judgment to compensate for unexpected situations. The discussion that followed demonstrated Elena's continued engagement with emerging tactical challenges despite her retirement from active service. Her gentle voice guided students through scenarios involving autonomous systems, cyber warfare, and space-based platforms, always emphasizing the human elements that determined operational success. Elena's influence extended beyond the classroom through her ongoing consultation work with the Defense Department's Advanced Research Projects Agency. Her coordination principles were being adapted for applications ranging from disaster response to space exploration, proving that the methods she had developed for naval warfare had broader implications for any situation requiring complex coordination under pressure. Dr. Michael Torres, the former Commander Torres's son, who had become a civilian defense analyst, approached Elena after one of her lectures with obvious admiration. "Professor Vasquez, my father never stopped talking about the tactical coordination you demonstrated during the Pacific engagement. He said it changed his entire understanding of what effective leadership could accomplish." Elena's gentle response reflected the grace that had sustained her through years of professional challenges. "Michael, your father was a good officer who learned to value competence over conventional leadership styles. That willingness to adapt and grow made him more effective in his later assignments." The conversation highlighted Elena's remarkable lack of bitterness about the years she had spent being dismissed and marginalized. Her gentle voice had always focused on mission accomplishment rather than personal recognition, and that focus had enabled her to maintain professional relationships even with officers who had initially failed to appreciate her contributions. Elena's legacy lived on through the officers she had trained, many of whom had become senior commanders, implementing her coordination methods throughout the world's navies. Admiral Patricia Walsh, the former strike leader who had executed Elena's airstrikes during the Pacific engagement, now commanded the entire Pacific Fleet and credited Elena's training with her own success in complex multinational operations. "Professor Vasquez," Admiral Walsh commented during a visit to the Naval War College, The coordination principles you taught me have proven invaluable in every major operation I've commanded. Your emphasis on comprehensive platform awareness has prevented countless tactical errors that could have resulted in friendly fire incidents or mission failures." Elena's gentle voice carried quiet satisfaction as she responded. "Patricia, the most important lesson is that coordination success depends on the competence and dedication of the people executing the plans. My role was simply to provide frameworks that enabled talented officers like yourself to perform at your best." The exchange exemplified Elena's consistent focus on enabling others rather than claiming credit for their achievements. Her gentle voice had guided tactical operations, but she understood that success had ultimately depended on the skill and courage of sailors throughout the fleet who had trusted her judgment enough to execute complex and dangerous maneuvers. Elena's research continued through her work with the Center for Strategic and International Studies, where her gentle voice contributed to policy discussions about naval strategy and international maritime relations. Her insights about coordination and cooperation had implications that extended far beyond military applications, influencing everything from international trade agreements to environmental protection initiatives. The Pacific engagement had become a case study taught at military academies around the world. But Elena's gentle voice ensured that the human elements of the story were never lost in technical analysis. She insisted that students understand the personal courage required for tactical coordination, recognizing that behind every successful operation were individuals who had chosen to trust each other under extreme pressure. Commander Sterling approached Elena after a particularly intense seminar on crisis coordination, her expression reflecting the intellectual impact of Elena's teaching. "Professor Vasquez, your analysis of decision-making under pressure has changed how I think about leadership responsibilities. The gentle authority you demonstrate seems more effective than traditional command styles." Elena's response revealed the self-awareness that had enabled her to maintain effectiveness despite institutional bias. "Alexandra, authority based on competence and concern for others will always be more sustainable than authority based on rank or personality. Gentle voices can carry tremendous power when they're backed by genuine expertise and unwavering commitment to mission success." The insight had profound implications for military leadership development and organizational effectiveness in general. Elena's gentle voice had proved that effective authority could be earned through results rather than demanded through position, and that quiet competence could achieve outcomes that dramatic leadership had never accomplished. Elena's influence extended to the private sector through her consulting work with corporations facing complex coordination challenges. Her principles for multi-platform tactical coordination translated effectively to business environments where different departments or subsidiaries needed to work together toward common objectives under competitive pressure. The irony was not lost on Elena that the gentle voice which had been dismissed in military briefings was now sought after by Fortune 500 companies seeking to improve their organizational effectiveness. Her coordination methods had proven valuable in any environment where success depended on enabling different groups to work together efficiently under pressure. Elena's final major project involved establishing the International Naval Coordination Center, a multinational institution dedicated to developing coordination protocols for joint naval operations. The center would ensure that her methods and philosophy would continue influencing maritime strategy long after her own involvement had concluded. The dedication ceremony for the center took place aboard USS Enterprise, the same ship where Elena had coordinated the South China Sea demonstration that had validated her advanced coordination protocols. Representatives from 37 nations attended the ceremony, acknowledging the global impact of Elena's contributions to naval coordination doctrine. The International Naval Coordination Center, Elena explained to the assembled delegates, represents our collective commitment to ensuring that effective coordination principles are available to all nations, committed to maritime security and international cooperation. Our gentle voices, speaking in many languages, will guide operations that preserve peace and protect the freedom of navigation that benefits all humanity. The center's establishment marked the culmination of Elena's career-long mission to prove that gentle voices could carry more authority than loud commands when they were backed by competence and dedication. Her coordination methods had transcended national boundaries and military traditions, proving their effectiveness in any environment where complex operations required precise human coordination. Elena's retirement from the Naval War College was marked by tributes from around the world, but she insisted that the ceremony focus on the future rather than the past. Her gentle voice guided the establishment of scholarship programs that would ensure that promising young officers could study coordination methods regardless of their economic backgrounds or national origins. Effective coordination has always been about service to others rather than personal recognition, Elena reminded the audience during her farewell address. The greatest honor any coordinator can receive is knowing that the people who trusted their judgment achieved results that exceeded what any of them could have accomplished individually. The principal had guided Elena throughout her career and explained why her gentle voice had earned respect that transcended military hierarchies and national boundaries. Her focus on enabling others had created a legacy that would influence coordination theory and practice for generations to come. Elena's post-retirement years were spent writing the definitive textbook on tactical coordination, a comprehensive work that combined theoretical frameworks with detailed case studies from her operational experience. Her gentle voice guided readers through complex scenarios, always emphasizing the human elements that determined coordination success or failure. The textbook became required reading at military academies worldwide and was translated into dozens of languages. Elena's coordination principles influenced not only military operations, but also disaster response, international development projects, and scientific research initiatives that required complex multi-organizational cooperation. Dr. Elena Vasquez, as she was now known in academic circles, continued teaching advanced seminars for senior officers from around the world. Her gentle voice shared insights that could only come from someone who had coordinated operations under the most extreme conditions and had seen her methods prove effective in every scenario where they had been applied. The officers who studied with Elena in her later years carried her influence to the highest levels of military and civilian leadership. Her gentle voice had created a network of coordination specialists who understood that effective leadership was ultimately about service rather than recognition, and that quiet competence could achieve results that dramatic gestures never accomplished. Elena's final public appearance took place at the Naval War College's centennial celebration, where she was honored as one of the institution's most influential graduates. Her gentle voice addressed an audience that included heads of state, military, commanders, and academic leaders from around the world. "The greatest lesson of my career," Elena concluded, "is that gentle voices, speaking with knowledge and conviction, can accomplish things that seem impossible when viewed from conventional perspectives. Our authority comes not from the volume of our words, but from the quality of our preparation and the sincerity of our commitment to serving others." The words encapsulated Elena's entire philosophy of leadership and coordination, explaining why her gentle voice had achieved results that louder, more traditional leaders had never accomplished. Her legacy would continue through every officer who understood that true authority comes from competence rather than charisma, and that the most important decisions are often made by the quietest people in the room. Elena Vasquez had proved that heroes don't always announce themselves with dramatic declarations or commanding presence. Sometimes they whisper their way into history, earning authority through results rather than demanding recognition through volume. Her gentle voice had coordinated victory against impossible odds and had transformed not only naval doctrine, but also fundamental understanding of what effective leadership could accomplish when it focused on mission success rather than personal advancement. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.